What it do, cooks? It's your boy, and it's time for another episode of Hater on the Road. That's right, Hater on the Road. The hater is energized and is feeling great. Today is a day of new beginnings for the hater in his personal life. I'm going to go on a massive diet, start going to the gym every day. I'm going to do amazing things, and hopefully these things also are reflected in my YouTube channel. Maybe I'll even do a thing where I just tell you guys how much weight I've lost. You know what I mean? Because the hater's getting a little fat because the hater hasn't worked out in a while. And the hater always wants to remain strong, but more importantly, the hater also wants to remain in cardiovascular health. You know what I mean? So with all that being said, let's get to today's video, which is another complete crackdown on one of the worst stables of all time. That's right, none other than the Wyatt Six. Okay, the Wyatt Six, for anyone that still is holding hope that the Wyatt Six is anything more than a jobber faction, I got news for you, pal. Get rid of that hope immediately, because it is cemented that this is a faction of complete and utter jobbers. Number one, they've been around for, I don't even know how long, let's say 3 months to be safe. Maybe 2.5 months, I don't know. It feels like it's been a long time, right? Basically right after WrestleMania. I don't think it was the Raw after WrestleMania, so it's not 4 months yet, but it was shortly thereafter, right? And during this debut that they had, which was an atrocious debut, if you ask me, like, okay, at the time, it seemed pretty good, right? Because you're like, oh, cool, a new faction is debuting. It was very, overproduced, and you're like, all right, maybe there's something there. But then what happened was a throwaway, like, mini angle happened within the debut, right? The Wyatt Six destroyed, like, the entire WWE production crew, right? There was, like, dead bodies, basically, laid to waste by the Wyatt Six. One of these was Chad Gable, and the fans reacted to it because, quite honestly, he was the only recognizable face in the sea of people that were destroyed. Maybe there was another one here and there, but Chad Gable is the one that stood out because they put fake blood on him. I don't even know how they made him bleed, but whatever, it is what it is, right? We didn't see this beating, which would have been nice. We basically just saw the Wyatt Six just being there afterwards, right? They're just like hanging around. Like Dexter Lumis is on top of these boxes, perched up like he's an actual vulture, you know what I mean? But long story short, the way that this thing went down is very, very poorly. I thought this was going to be a throwaway segment in the sense that, I think everybody thought this was a throwaway segment, and the entire purpose of it was just to say, oh, the Wyatt Six is here. Like they've debuted, here they are. Here's what they look like. Here's Uncle Howdy in this latest incarnation. But that's not all that happened, right? Who would have thought? Nobody. I don't even think the WWE thought it was going to go this way. But the way that the debut played out, you had like the Wyatt Six focusing in on Chad Gable, apparently, right? They had some sort of issue with Chad Gable. This was never articulated. First of all, why did they even attack him? You know what I mean? But whatever, fine. They're a menacing heel faction who attacks innocents, right? That's par for the course. Like we do that sometimes in wrestling. We have bad guys that attack good guys just for no reason other than they're bad. This works especially well with like these monstery supernatural gimmick things, right? As a matter of fact, I think one of the worst things that happened to The Fiend was that The Fiend was eventually positioned as someone that was going after the Universal title, which, in my personal opinion, The Fiend shouldn't even understand that there's something called the Universal title. The Fiend shouldn't be concerned with winning the Universal Championship because The Fiend is like a monster or a retard, and as a result, he should not even be aware that there's like a championship opportunity around the corner or anything like that, right? The Fiend shouldn't be concerned with pinning people. Like, for example, that's another thing that like I think they did wrong with Bray Wyatt and all of his incarnations, right? It's like, there would be false finishes in the match, right? There should be no false finishes in a Bray Wyatt match, right? Especially in a Fiend match. Why is the Fiend pinning someone? Like he'll do a close and then he'll pin someone. I thought you were the Fiend. I didn't realize you were just another wrestler. But anyways, let's not focus too much on the Fiend here, even though the same things can happen with these other jobbers, and it already has, right? Then this feud seemingly culminates with a boring match between the Wyatt Six and the group of Chad Gable and the Creed brothers, which I think subsequently, or maybe even then, was named American Made, right? Now, you would think that, okay, this match is over. There's no reason to continue this anymore, right? The Wyatt Six, like the the jobbers from the Wyatt Six, not even Bo Dallas, not even Uncle Howdy himself, did anything impressive in this match. But despite that, they were able to beat their rivals. So now you're like, okay, great. What's next for Wyatt Six? Well, the next week they just don't show up. And now they show up again. And, well, lo and behold, right? American Made now has Ivy Nile in there. And now they can do an 8-man tag match. I don't know. I don't care, right? But the takeaway here is that the Wyatt Six is still focusing on Chad Gable. It's like, what more do you want from Chad Gable? Also, a lot of fans didn't notice this because, quite frankly, a lot of wrestling fans just aren't very smart. But in the debut, clearly, the Wyatt Six were presented as heels. I don't want to hear any kind of like nonsense. Oh, we didn't know what they were. Yeah, we did, because they're attacking employees, right? And that's just like, bona fide, surefire heel tactics, right? If somebody attacks a referee, if somebody attacks like a backstage guy, they're presented as a heel. And they also attacked Chad Gable, who at the time was like a tweener, right? Like, he was kind of a heel, but like, there was still a possibility that he comes through and he, stays a face depending on how the whole Alpha Academy thing was going to play out, right? But, whatever, fine. Sometimes heels attack heels, right? The whole point of the attack was it was this indiscriminate attack. But as we found out, it wasn't that indiscriminate because they keep going after Chad Gable. Now, Chad Gable was a heel, but in this storyline, Chad Gable is the face, right? Like, Chad Gable and American Made, despite the fact that they like get booed and they like, just kind of like scoff at the crowd and do other heelish things, they're completely justified, right? Chad Gable was unprovokedly attacked by the Wyatt Six, so it goes to reason that he's going to attack them back. It also goes to reason that if he can, he's going to find friends to help him out. Since he has no friends because Alpha Academy left him, now he has to find new friends, right? The story there makes sense. But the WWE switched it, right? For some reason now, we're supposed to believe that this jobber faction are faces and that Chad Gable and American Made are now the heels, because I don't really know why, other than the fact that they're feuding with, Alpha Academy kind of as well. So as a result, like, they're the heels in that situation. But this brings up an interesting point about, like, variable characters, right? Someone can be a heel in one context, but then be a face in another context. I think that's actually a good idea, and I think that's how they should kind of do these things. You know what I mean? To kind of have these things make some sense. But they didn't go for this at all, right? They just established that the Wyatt Six are now faces only because they're going after Chad Gable. But it's like, what are they going to do next? Are they going to just go after other heels? The fact is, and I like Chad Gable, you know what I mean? I think that Chad Gable is one of the few wrestlers in this company that has had a good post-WrestleMania period, you know what I mean? Like, he's lost nearly every match, but he's gotten some TV time. He's gotten reshuffled. He started a new group. He turned heel. He had some opportunities at the Intercontinental title and so forth, right? It's basically him, Bronson Reed, and Braun Breaker are the only ones. And I guess, I have to be honest, the new Bloodline, obviously they've had a good post-WrestleMania in that they're featured prominently and they're in main events. But beyond that, it's like everybody else has pretty much taken a step back. Like anybody, I guess Gunther, but in my opinion, Gunther just has a different title, but he's in the same position. Like, he's just this guy fighting mid-carders, Oh, Randy Orton is the main eventer. Not anymore, he's not. You know what I mean? We have to, like, kind of understand that as a fact of life. So, but with that being said, it's like, clearly, despite everything I just said about Chad Gable, he's an undercard guy. He's not even a mid-carder. You know what I mean? Like, for example, if you were to have a match against Braun Breaker, there's absolutely no doubt that Braun Breaker would retain his title, right? So, with all that being said, it's like, well, then what do we do, right? What's the whole logic behind any of this stuff, Well, the logic, in my opinion, is exactly that, right? It's, like, we have the Wyatt Six, they're now faces, but it's like, what are they gonna accomplish as faces, right? They can't really do anything as faces because, they're just inherently a heel concept, right? But I think that dichotomy really points the sign towards true north, if you will, right? It points the compass, it points the weather vane towards true north. And the reality is that this group is headed nowhere, right? Because like, if they were headed somewhere, they would have gotten there. You know what I mean? They would have moved on to their next feud. They would have moved on to being an actual presence. But all they do is they interfere in shit. They ruin the show, and they attack Chad Gable. So it's like, how is anyone excited about that, right? Like, does anyone tune into Raw? This is a serious question. Tell me in the comments. Does anyone tune into Raw and think to themselves, man, I can't wait till the Wyatt 6 attacks Chad Gable again? Because you know that's what they're going to do. So it's like, what's the point? You know, what's the point of this? And in my opinion, there is no point to this. This is all really stupid. And as a result, they need to go. They just need to go. Simple as that, cucks. So that's been the update on the Wyatt 6. They still suck.